Okay, so today in Avid Media Composer, we're going to look at some specific effects. Particularly in the effect palette, we are going to look at the keying effects. And those include Animatte, the Luma Key, the Matte Key, the RGB key, and the Spectromatte key. Some of these effects I think are fantastic. Some of them I have some questions about, I don't necessarily love. But this is to do some kind of keying or cutting out inside of Avid Media Composer. So we'll go back to our bins here. I'm going to make a new sequence. I'm going to hit Command-Shift-N on a Mac, and we'll just put a new sequence in the key bin. And so we'll call this sequence key sequence. The key sequence. This is not keyframing, this is keying. And so we're going to make some stuff in the key sequence. So for starters, I'm going to just put something in the background to have something that I can key over. So I can cut out something over top of something else. I have this 10-second clip of New York, this little aerial shot of New York that my buddy Rick shot. Looks kind of cool. Excellent. I'm going to put that in here, and we'll put that into a sequence. There's no audio to this, but it's fine. And now we're going to make a second video track. So I'm going to hit Command-Y, and we'll make a new video track, video 2, and I'm going to start putting some stuff on video 2. So for starters, I do want to talk about the Luma Key. And the Luma Key is a simple luminance key. So it's going to key or cut out based on luminance, based on levels of brightness. So it's going to be a brightness-based key. So we're going to go here, and we're going to say Luma Key. And we're going to say, grab in this AFC logo, Artist for Change. And I'm going to put this on video 2 here. And I'm going to grab this up here. We'll just take this from the beginning here, and we'll just kind of mark a point here. Maybe just mark this and say, over right here, there's no audio on this either, so it's not really worth worrying about. And we'll put this on top of this. So right now we have New York here, but if we go up to the other monitor here, you'll see it says Artist for Change. Well, I want to cut out the black and keep the white parts. And this is a pretty stark black and white image, so we have really easy job doing some decent Luma keying. And so here, we're going to say Luma Key and apply this on top of this. And it's going to simply enough, bam. I mean, one and done. Over, easy, nothing to worry about. I mean, there you go. If it's a really stark black and white image, I don't even have to go into the properties of this or go to the settings of this. I can just work with it as it is. So we can just take it simple enough. Well, that was a little bit too easy, so let's make this a little bit more difficult. Let's try something else here. We're going to go back to bins. I'll go to keying. We'll go to a couple examples here. We're going to go to Input Source Browser. I'm going to bring in this red dot here. And this red dot, we're just going to link this in here. And we're going to see how the red dot does cutting this out. Now, the red dot is a red dot here over white. So we have this over white. We're going to mark this again, and then we're going to just overwrite this on top of here and overwrite the red dot. And here, with the overwrite of the red dot, we're going to go into the Luma Key again and see what it cuts out. And it cut out the red dot. But I don't want to cut out the red dot. I want to cut out the white part and keep the red dot. So let's go into the effect editor. And so here in the effect editor, it asks us about the key color. Now, we could dial in the key color based on our hue, saturation, and luminance here if we wanted to. We have those values. Or we could simply double-click this and grab the color white and say, hey, white is what we want to cut out, and we'll cut out white. And there again, it made a red dot. Now, you notice the edges are a little bit aliased, so we have a little bit of aliasing on the edges here, so it's a little bit, stair-steppy on the edges. We can crank the gain up and bring more gain in or more gain out, but this is pretty much a one and done. We crank this up to 1, it pretty much takes that out, and we can kind of take more out if we want to. You can see that we can actually take this past 51, and it takes everything out. So there we have our gain, but we can also have a softness adjustment. So the softness should soften this up a little bit and soften these edges a little bit. And now we have a little bit of smoother edges there. There's a foreground control, a scaling control, a position control, a grid control, which I don't really want to worry about, and a cropping control. Again, this was relatively easy to cut out and make a red dot that's superimposed over New York, some kind of red dot, noticing New York there. But let's just go a little bit more complicated, and let's grab a different clip here. So we'll try something else here. I have this clip here in this Animatte bin here of this picture here. And this is a video clip of this frame right here of this. And I want to cut out the white lettering. I want to keep the black words, and I want to get rid of all the background here. So let's just take this. We'll take this in the beginning here. We'll mark all of this. Mark all of this clip. We'll go to the beginning of this, and we'll just say, hey, let's just overwrite this on top of here. And now we have this clip over top of New York. So again, I'm going to try this with a Luma Key. We're going to take this out with a Luma Key. So in here, I'm going to go to Luma Key, and we're going to try to make this, and automatically cut out the white parts, and that's not necessarily what we wanted. We wanted to cut out the black parts and make the black parts transparent. We want to cut out the white parts. Excuse me. And so we're going to go in here, and we're going to switch our color. We can just crank the luminance all the way up and say, hey, No, make sure it's the white parts, not the black parts, the white parts, not the black, not the white parts. And now we have a gain control that we can really appreciate and see what's going on here with our gain control. If we can't gain control up too much, we're going to lose all the words altogether, because these are not necessarily purely black. These are kind of, you know, what they are. We could theoretically go in here and say step into this, and maybe inside of here underneath this effect, or if we did it this way, we stepped in here, we could step into this and say, hey, let's take this and let's make this more contrasty so we can make this easier to work with in terms of how we work. And so if you saw my demonstration, my tutorial on color correction, we could go in here and say, let's just boost the contrast up here and make this have a lot of contrast, and oh yeah, that's at least a little bit more intense. If you want that level of intensity, you can make that level of intensity kind of a thing. We can step out of here, hop back into color mode, and now we have this. Okay, so now we have this a little bit more detailed, defined, because this is easier to work with. So now we can see what our gain should be. And now we have this, you know, we'll just leave this at 21, I think. 21, 22. Yeah, somewhere around there. We have all these letters. Obviously, there's some controls there that we can make this a little softer on the edges. And we can kind of negotiate the softness versus the gain of what this should be and how this should look. Notice that there is some edges around this, so what we can go do is we can say maybe scale this up a little bit so it's a little bit more prominent. We can scale this up here. So it just goes to the edges. And now we're just going to crop off the edges. So we're going to go here to the top edge, try to crop off the top edge right here, and pull this down, so it's getting rid of that without getting rid of the Y. And unfortunately, this is at a weird angle, so it's not a perfectly wonderful edge. If we play with the Animatte a little bit later, we'll get a little bit better work here to go with. And so now we can go to here and get rid of the, keep the go, but get rid of everything else. Above the go there, just have a exact measurement there, something solid. We'll go to the left edge, we'll pull this all left edge in, and pull this to there. And we pull the right edge in to the end of the, which is the longest word we have here, and we can kind of keep this like there. And so now we have at least something. Is it great? Is it perfect? No, but we did some kind of a luminance key there. It was much easier with the Artist for Change, the AFC logo, to have it. This thing obviously moves, and so our cropping will be a little bit questionable unless we keyframe it, but there's the idea of using a luminance key to say, hey, we want to keep either the brightest parts or the darkest parts. We want to do some kind of a luminance key based on there. So we'll take this, we're going to get rid of all of this, we're just going to mark an in point at the beginning, hit the end key, mark an out point, and then I'm just going to say, from beginning to end, let's just lift all this out, boom, goodbye. We'll get rid of the in and out points, and we'll start here fresh. So we've done the Luma Key, so Luma Key is good. Let's go to the next key here, and we're going to grab in here a clip here in the key bin of this picture of Justin. Now, I want to talk about this picture of Justin. This is Justin shooting a gun here. He's firing a gun. Look at him. Boom. The background of this is not great. I mean, the key is not fantastic. The green screen work that was done, it was done kind of poorly. The green isn't bright enough, I don't think. There's dark edges around the edge of this, so there's going to be some problems here. You know, it's grainy. It was shot with a high ISO, so, or a lot of gain in the image, so there's some graininess in here. It's not the best in the world, and so we are going to have some problems here. But we're going to put this up on video track 2. We don't really need the audio, I think. I think we'll leave the audio alone. We'll put in some cool sound effects of some actual gunfire, and we'll have this over New York. So he's firing his gun over New York City in the air, I guess, which just makes no sense, but we're going to work with it anyway. Effects palette. I'm going to go to this effect called RGB keyer. Now, this RGB keyer, it is the lesser of the two. You'll see RGB keyer and you'll see Spectromatte. Avid is really happy about Spectromatte. They really love Spectromatte. They think Spectromatte is a wonderful, wonderful effect. RGB keyer is kind of their previous effect that they don't necessarily think is the best thing in the world. They would rather push you towards Spectromatte. But we're going to look at RGB keyer just to see what it can do and see if we can pull something off with RGB keyer. Okay, so we're going to grab this RGB keyer and drag this down to here, and it's going to bring up the RGB keyer, and we can go into the effect editor and open this up and take a look at what this has. So right now it has a key color. The key color has defaulted towards, I don't know, Star Wars blue back when they were doing blue screen with film, but now in the digital world they tend to do green more often. So we're going to grab here and we're going to grab the key color. Now we could double click and we could type in a green or choose a green that matched this, but let's go a little bit more carefully and say here, let's just click this once and bring up the color info. And so here's the color info. We can grab this and grab this. Now you notice here that it's not grabbing the right color green. It's grabbing, it says here in the RGB 8-bit, it grabs it grabs a weird shade of this. And this is the problem with the color info thing. This thing I have a difficult relationship with because it doesn't always grab the right color in terms of the interface, and now it's grabbed something wrong. So let's try and click on this again. And now let's grab, okay, so now it's grabbing the green. You can see up in here when I grab, it's highlighting the green part, which is what I want to do in the first place. Sometimes this takes a little bit of finagling to get it to work right. This color info thing is not always my best friend. You want to make sure it's green in here and green down here, and it's showing up green. And now we're going to grab a shade of green that looks pretty cool, although that is a weird kind of effect that I like. We're going to grab here and grab the green, and so it's there. Now the gain right now has been pushed up to 20, so it automatically added some Chroma Key gain, and it's pushed that gain up to 20. Let's just close this because we don't want it anymore. So again, that thing, hitting that once will open up the color info thing, and the color info thing, just play with it. It's sometimes a little bit finicky on my system particularly. You know, that's how it is. But we're going to bring this down a little bit and bring this down to about here, and just bring it down enough so that we can see just in here. So we're at a gain of 1, which is actually, I don't know, not that bad. It's a little, I mean, just 1. I mean, 0 would be nothing, basically, but 1 was just enough for us. So we're going to crank this down. Let's go down to 3, 2, 1 here, and adjust it there. Now, you could play a little bit with the gain, with the softness, and adjust this accordingly, and get a pretty decent key there, like so. And so you can see some controls in here for the gain. Again, we'll just drag this to, I'm just going to type in 1 here and just make this gain of 1. So now we have a gain of 1 here, and we can see how this looks. You know, it didn't do a bad key. There's some problems. There's some corner problems here. In the corner, there's a little bit of green sticking through. It didn't really hold on too well. But what I really want to do here is I can adjust the softness, bring the softness down, bring the softness up, and actually bring the softness up to about 10 maybe, 11, 12. 12, we actually have almost no green, and we have this is pretty clean. So this is actually doing a decent key. It was never really a bad key. It's just, you know, are there better keys? Yeah, there are better keys. And this is, you know, relatively easy. We can try this with other things and see how these things work and see how the key works. So let's go here. So the gain softness will show me what this looks like. Now what I love to do is I love to show the alpha. And when I show the alpha, it shows me what this looks like as a cutout. And so this is what it's showing me. The white parts are the parts it's keeping. The black parts are the parts it's getting rid of. Right now, you know, my values, my hue, saturation, and volume values are 110, 105, and 92. You know, so I have that there, and that's giving me that color green. I don't know if I hit that color green just perfectly or chose just the perfect color green, but really a gain of 1 and a softness of 12 did a decent job for me. So let's see what we can do. So the show alpha sometimes helps me see if there's little pockets here where there's some issues with the green. So we're going to turn the show alpha off, and we can still see that little green sticking through there. If there are any holes here, the show alpha will actually show me any spots where there's any holes. There's a little bit of flicker. There's a little bit of flicker, I think, somewhere in there. I think that's a little bit of a, yeah, a little flicker there. So we might want to bring that down a little bit, maybe bring the softness down a little bit. Again, we'll go to the effect palette here, and we'll go to the effect editor, and we'll say bring the softness down to maybe from 12 to 11 or something, or maybe just 10. And we'll get some more of that green back, but we'll get more green here, but this is keeping this more white. Okay, the next thing we have is, you notice in the edges here, if you zoom in on the edges here, we're getting a lot of edging here. We're getting a lot of aliasing on the edges, and that's sometimes a problem. So what we want to do is we want to soften the matte. And so we want to soften the outline or soften the edges. Edges are normally, whenever you do a chroma key, edges are usually a problem where they are the worst. They are the worst around the edges because the system doesn't really know what it's keeping, what it's getting rid of. So we can do two things. We can erode this. And over here you see this control that says erode. And I want to show you that when I turn this on, it's going to do something weird. Let's just turn the alpha off for a second and see how this looks. As soon as I turn the matte controls on, all of a sudden half of my green goes away. So, or half of my green comes back and it shows a little difference. So this is a little bit of a change here. So we're going to play a little bit with our matte control. We can do this by showing alpha and see this here and see what happens when we do this. But we can also see this here. So I'm going to turn on the erode, and what the erode is going to do is going to pull back and pull back the green. Now it created some green automatically because it's now looking at the matte, it's looking at the edge, and it's focusing how it works in the edge. So let's pull this back down here, and you're going to see it's going to pull away the edge. Now it's not pulling enough because it only pulls back 10 pixels, but what we may want to do is we want to increase the gain here. In this case, we may crank up the gain maybe to 2 or 3 and get this a little bit tighter, a little bit smaller here. So now my gain is at 3, my softness is at 10. Again, I could pull my softness up or down. I would go in small increments with this, kind of bring this back and cut this out here. Well, again, we're going to zoom in and look really close at the edges here, and we can have this here. We can erode more, we can erode less. So you can see that I'm pulling off more or less. And then the other control we have is the ability to blur this. So I'm going to crank my blur a little bit in small increments and make this look a little bit softer. So we're getting a little bit of soft edge now, but you can see that edge is kind of making a halo around him. If you look really closely, you can see a little bit of halo around him. So a little bit of road, a little bit of that, and maybe a little bit more gain. We can cut this out and cut it there, but now you're starting to see a little bit of New York shining through. So we don't want to go over 3. Let's not go over 3, because again, if we look at our show alpha, you're starting to see some kind of empty spots there. So that's going to be a little bit too much. So again, it's going to be a little bit trickery, but the alpha is a nice way to look and see what's really going on in terms of there. Let's bring the softness down a little bit. We'll take this out. Cool, we have that. We can crank up the gain a little bit up to there. Maybe again, take the softness down a little bit of playfulness, a little bit more gain, a little bit less softness, and I feel pretty good about that right now. So maybe one more, and we have that. So that's a relatively good key. Again, you want to look at the edges and see how they look. Now it's a little less aliased. We could maybe blur this a little bit more. I'm afraid to blur it too much. There, we can look at it again, look at it close up, and we have a relatively decent key there. We still have a little bit of something showing up in the corner here, which is a problem, which we'll have to deal with. Let's take the show alpha off, and now we get, okay, so now it's looking pretty good. We have a decent job there. And so we have that matte control there. There's also a spill suppressor in here. So if you get green in any of the foreground, the spill suppressor might help you. And the spill suppressor will be green that reflects off of the background onto the foreground. So if he was wearing like a bright white, or sometimes in the underneath his chin or something, you'll see shades of green or something. We're not really getting too much of that. Maybe in the gun, if he moves the gun, maybe you might get some green blur in there. Sometimes you'll get some green blur right there when he moves the gun, yeah. So you may want to increase the spill suppressor, which would reduce the green from the foreground. And so that would neutralize the green there. You can see that being neutralized and turning that green to a shade of gray. We'll just crank the spill suppressor up and have that be less green as it goes through. And this is the RGB key here. Notice it comes with a really, really basic color correction control in here. So it has a really relatively simple color correction control that can do some decent color correction inside of there. We can crank this up and say, let's increase the contrast a little bit, because he looks really dull in front of this background. So we can bring the contrast up a little bit and have it be more, oh yeah, like so much cooler. So much of a cooler look. Bring the brightness up, down, I don't know. Let's bring the brightness up. Well, we'll leave the brightness alone. And we'll just return that back to 0. We can increase some saturation and make them look a little bit more colorful in this front of this background. There we go. We can also change the hue if we wanted to, but I don't think we really want to do that. So let's, again, leave that at 0. We have those controls. And then lastly, so we have a relatively decent key. We're seeing a relatively decent key. And actually, I'm losing that noise in the background that was there. No, it's still there a little bit. Again, that's why that show alpha is really nice, to show you, hey, there may be something imperfect in this that you can't see because it's too dark and you can't really tell. And so in here, we have some of those controls, like so. Now, in this case, this Chroma Key control, the RGB key control, doesn't come with a cropping control. It doesn't have a basic crop built into it, which means you would need another effect, like maybe the picture-in-picture effect, to say, hey, let's crop this. And I can show you really quickly how we might do that. We might take this and say, hey, let's step in, and let's take, say, for example, the blend effects picture-in-picture, or the 3D warp effect, which would make this small, which we don't want to do. So let's go here, scale this up. Let's scale this back to 100 and make this full size. And now we just want to crop off this edge a little bit. So we just want to go to this left crop right here and just say, let's pull this back a little bit like there. And so now we're not getting that. Now when we step back out, we'll get this cut out like so. So we get that kind of cut out there. I'm getting rid of that. I don't really like that in terms of how that's cut out. That's doing a weird thing with the cutout. So that's a bit of a problem that I'm not really liking in there. So we'll find some other ways to do this as we explore some other techniques. We'll remove this effect for now and get rid of that. Again, it's trial and error. We try stuff, see what we can get. If we throw the picture-in-picture after the fact, I'm going to option click the picture-in-picture after the fact to put it on top of there. It's going to make this small again. That looks better. We're going to scale this back up to 100% and have it there. And if we crop now and pull this back, yeah, that's much better. That's much better. So we're going to do the picture-in-picture after the fact. We're going to do the picture-in-picture on top of the RGB key here and get a relatively better key. And now you can see with this RGB key here, we're still we're not getting that green part because it's not showing up in the frame. But now we also have there. So yeah, just an order of operations of how this thing processes and what it does in terms of the picture-in-picture effect versus there. So that looks pretty good. That's a relatively decent key. I mean, I would take that. You know, it looks okay. Relatively decent key. It looks good. I mean, obviously he's floating over New York, which doesn't make sense at all. I know it doesn't make sense, but it is what it is. Okay, so now I'm going to show you something weird here. We're going to go here. We're going to get rid of Justin here. So I'm just going to grab Justin, the whole clip of Justin here, mark clip, and we're going to grab Justin, and I'm going to replace Justin here. Or maybe I'll just lift him out for now. We'll lift him out, get rid of Justin. Goodbye, Justin. Hit the G key, get rid of the in and out points. And I'm going to grab this clip here of J. And we're going to grab J. So J is a little bit different green screen. He was shot a little bit differently. He's got a lot more hair going on, so we have some issues here with the hair. Is going to be difficult because, again, those edges are going to be really hard to figure out. And really small, really thin edges really become a problem, really become a difficulty for us. So let's take a look. Let's go in here. Let's grab in J. We'll just mark this area here. We'll mark the whole thing. And we're just going to put J over top here and overwrite him on top here. So here's J on top of this. Here's going to be J over New York. Here it looks like there. Cool. That's what it looks like. So now we're going to go to this other effect here called the key effect Spectromatte. Spectromatte. This is a weird chroma key. I want to show you how weird this is, just so you don't think that I'm being a jerk and I'm being like, no, this is a weird effect when it's a perfectly normal effect. It's not. It's a weird effect. You ready? All right, cool. Spectromatte. We're going to put this on J and have J have the Spectromatte effect. So the Spectromatte effect does a couple weird things. It asks for key color. Okay, that's relatively normal. That makes sense. I got it. Cool. So I can grab this, click on here. I'll grab my key color. Again, it's grabbing a weird shade here. That color info thing, grabbing a weird shade. Let's see if it grabs something. It didn't grab what I wanted. Let's click on the key color again, and now, oh, there it goes. See, again, click on it, then play with it a little bit. Just, you know, wiggle it a little bit. And so we're going to grab a key color, and we're going to cut out there. And so, okay, right off the bat, it did a relatively decent key. I want to show you what's going on here. So it gives me a control here called Chroma Control. This is how it's going to cut the key out. So under the Chroma Control, there's a tolerance, a key sat line, a key saturation, an inner softness, an outer softness, a alpha offset, and opacity. Man, what do all these things mean? You can look this up. You can read about all these things and look up what the key sat line is and the key saturation, the inner softness, the outer softness mean. But what I want to show you here is an idea called the spectrograph. And right now here it says in the source monitor, do nothing. Show me nothing. Give me no controls that I care about. Give me nothing. We're going to go here and go in the source monitor, this guy, show me the spectrograph. And it shows me this, and this is called the spectrograph. So let me show you how the spectrograph looks. I'm going to bring the tolerance down to 0. It's right now the tolerance is at 90. I'm going to bring the tolerance down to 0. So right now if we look at this, this is like our color wheel, right? So we have shades of red, shades of orange, yellow, green, blue, etc. there. What we've chosen is, imagine if you were going to draw this picture of J here. If you're going to draw this image here, we'll just go here to bypass. If you're going to draw J here, and you were using like an old-fashioned painter's palette, you know, one of those hand palette, whatever they're called, and you were going to draw and paint a picture of J, the smudges that you would make with this range of paint colors would look like this. So these are all the colors here. And so this part may be J's hair, and this part may be J's skin, and this part may be J's shirt or whatever it may be. This part down here, this little nub down here, is all the green screen. So all the green screen fell into basically this category right here. So all of this right there is the green screen. And you'll see right in the center of here, there's a little white dot. And the white dot is the color that we chose. We chose this color green. That is represented by that white dot. So if this thing was the color wheel, you know, or your vector scope, this is the white dot that it represents, which is weird. I know, I told you it was weird. So what we're going to do is we're going to crank up the tolerance and say, hey, what we want to do is we want to cut off this entire section here. We want to key out this entire nub here, because this whole nub right here is a shade of green. This is all, like, everything from here over is green. And so we're going to crank up the tolerance and say, let's open this up. And we're going to open up this window here. And as we open up this window, it's going to open up and cut off this green. Now what we can do is we can actually move this key color to choose the best key color we want. And we can do that by adjusting the red, green, and blue values. So you notice that the white dot is right here. And so the white dot is right there. And if we crank up the red, it's going to push this more towards red. So if we crank this up, it's going to move this more like this and move this dot over to here. So now the dot is here, which is totally the wrong place. Let me undo and go back, and actually going to go back a bunch. And try to grab this right about somewhere in the middle here. So we're going to grab, that's too little. Okay, right there. Let's see if I pull more towards blue, or I pull more towards green, can I get more in the middle of this nub? So I want to make sure that I'm grabbing right in the middle of this nub here. I can pull towards green and pull this more this way, or more this way, and pull this dot. And so this dot kind of decides where this thing is pulling from. So again, I'm going to undo and go back to here. And the blue is at 57. We can pull more towards the blue and pull all the way over to here to blue. Or undo and we can go back to here. So I think this is a good place. I think this is a good place to cut this off. This is where this kind of window is directed at. And now the window looks like this. So let's turn the bypass off. So we can look at this look here. And now we go to these controls for the tolerance, which we already adjusted. We're going to bring the tolerance back up to 85. So a little bit more, a little bit sharper. And then you go to the key sat line, the key saturation, the inner softness, the outer softness, and the alpha offset. Here's the truth. I always struggle with these because the language doesn't really work for me in a way that makes sense. What I want to do, though, again, I want to show the alpha. I do. I want to show the alpha and see what this looks like. Okay, let's see how this looks. Let's see how he looks here and how he looks there. So I can turn the show alpha on and off, and I can look at this before and after and see what this looks like. Okay, so let's take a look. If I crank up the key sat line, is that going to help me get more of Jay's hairs back? So let's say if I crank up the key sat line up here and crank this up, okay, that's not working for me because that's making more of this less black. And this is the background, and this should be black. So let's bring that back down. Let's leave the key sat line alone. You'll see that it actually makes a little line across this of where this thing cuts out. So it actually has a saturation line. So it's not just an angle window like a straight angle here. Before it was just a straight angle. It had no key sat line. It was just like a line, boom, like there. But we add a little bit of key sat line. We can kind of cut this off and siphon off this at a certain place. But again, I don't think I want that. I don't think I need that at all. I don't think that's helping me. I'll leave it at 14. Key saturation. This is going to be the whole window moving. And you'll see the window gets bigger or smaller. Well, that's actually giving me some harder edges. It filled in all the hair, but I don't know if I want that because I think I want the hair to exist. So let me pull this back, and let's see. I'm getting a little bit more hair here. I'm getting a little bit more pockets in between the hair. Again, so right here in between his hair, I want to get some of those pockets in there. And I have that there. The inner softness, this is going to be the inner edge of this, of how soft it is in the inner edge of this. We're going to zoom in a little bit closer so we can really see the inner softness. And so we get some inner softness there, how we increase or decrease some inner softness. So do we want that inner softness? We want less of that. You can see that in the hair. The hair is going to be the tricky part. The outer softness, we could pull to the left, fill that in, or leave some gaps there. I think I like the gaps. But now what I'm doing is, as I increase this, he's got a green spot in his shirt. If you look back here, if we bypass this, he's got some green lettering on his shirt, which is going to be a problem. And that's... We're going to have to work around that. We're going to have to work around that and deal with that as there. So I like this. I kind of like this in terms of what it is. I think I'm losing too much of his head, so let's bring the outer softness back to where it was before. Make sure he's got a full head of hair, but actually the hair is shining through. Again, mostly for my money is to play with this. Is to play with this a little bit and see what happens when I crank these values up, what I get, what I lose, and how it's there. See, now I'm getting a little bit of black here. So again, should I adjust the key saturation? No, that's getting more black there. Should I pull the key saturation down? Key saturation is there. Let's bring the inner softness in a little bit. I think I want a little bit of inner softness. I want to pull the outer softness down a little bit more and get it there. Here's the truth, and I'll be honest, I don't always know what I'm doing. And so I'm playing with the key sat line and seeing what the key sat line does as it cranks up. It's getting a little bit there. I don't want to touch the key sat line. The tolerance, maybe I could bring the tolerance up more or bring the tolerance down more, etc. Play with the alpha offset. Where this pulls, you can see some of the differences there. I'm going to crank that right about there. And so I have a relatively decent key there. So I have a little bit of key there. We're going to turn the show alpha off and see this here, how he looks there. Now, obviously, we're getting some green in some of the spots here in his hair. So we still see his hair shining through, which is really nice. Inside of here, if you look really closely, we can still see his hair, or New York shining through his hair, which I like, but we're still getting some green in the hair. So let's take a look. Let's leave Chroma Control alone. And I will be honest, I always, when I use Chroma Control, I just play with this and I look at the Luma and I look at the alpha channel and see what it is. There's some Luma controls that we can do, some stuff we can do to suppress shadows or whatever it may be. We're going to leave that alone for just a minute, but what we want to do is look at some of the matte processing. And the matte processing offers this option that we saw in the RGB keyer, which is the ability to blur the edges of the matte. And the matte is basically what parts we're keeping, what parts we're cutting out. So where the scissors are that we're keeping. This is going to matte blur. The matte blur has 3 options: blur, erode, and dilate. For most points, I probably want erode. Erode is going to blur by pulling in. So it's going to pull into the white. And so when we blur, it does both. It pulls into the white. It kind of brings us in and pulls in a little bit like there. Again, too much, he becomes kind of a weird ghost J. We don't want that. But maybe a little bit of blur in the edges. And we can make this erode. To dilate would be to blur out, which would include more of the green back. We want to get rid of the green. We want to reduce the green that's in there and blur that out there by eroding. And simple blur would blur both in and out, blur both directions. So it would blur in towards him and then out away from him in terms of both directions. Obviously, we have some green happening in the hair. There is some green happening in the hair. What do we want to do? We want to spill and have a spill control. So we can say spill and reduce some of that spill there and get rid of that green. And so now we're getting rid of some of the green. You have what's called a spill angle offset and a spill saturation. I would adjust this to get what you want in terms of there. And now we're reducing some of that green. We have that spill in there. Now too much spill is going to make him look pinkish, which is not what we want. We want to reduce that there and have him be a decent color and desaturate some of that green. So we can change the color of this, we can desaturate some of this, and we have that there. And so now Jay is looking pretty good. I mean, he's looking as a pretty good key. We'll see how he looks when he moves. We'll play this back. We have some of this going on. Yeah, he looks relatively decent key. He looks pretty good. I always have him open up his fingers so I can see if there's little spots in his fingers here where he doesn't look as great. Sometimes, you know, in the small crevices here of someone's body, the armpits, whatever it may be. I'm zooming in, but I'm also holding down Command Alt or Command Option to zoom in and see how this looks. Again, we can play with this and kind of tweak this until we get a relatively decent key. There is a scaling control, so we can scale him up. We can make him smaller if we wanted to. We could put him in the corner of the screen. So we could scale him down. Fixed aspect, we could scale him down and make him smaller. We could adjust position, put him in the corner of the screen here. Adjust him like so, and move him in the corner. Like there he is, and we can crop. And this does actually have a crop control. It does have some decent crop controls there. So there is all these controls. The Spectromat is a really nice key. Is this thing useful? Maybe. Maybe it's useful to you to help you at least establish what the best color is. I think in terms of best color, what you want to do is you want to be in kind of in the center of whatever the green is. You decide where the green is. You can kind of see where the green section is of what part of this was green, and you can cut this out and make this green like so. So some things we can do, some ideas we can play with, some fun we can have. All right, so let's move a step on. We're going to take J, we're going to remove this effect, and we're going to get rid of J, and we're going to show our last couple things inside of here. So let's grab all of J here, and we'll remove J. And we'll actually start over here. I'm going to do this in video 1, video 2. We're going to make we'll actually make a new sequence. Command-Shift-N, new sequence. We're going to put this in the Animatte bin. And I do want to talk about the Animatte effect. So the Animatte effect is going to be our last key that we're going to look at. And so here in Effect Palette, we have this control called Animatte. And this is a thing that in After Effects, and even in Premiere, is a thing that comes across relatively straightforward and simple. So we're going to clear this out, and we're going to start here with there. So we're going to take a shot here of this shot of this background of this train thing moving across here. We'll just grab a couple seconds of this. Yeah, we'll grab like 10 seconds of this. Cool. Oops, sorry. Didn't mean to hit that. 10 seconds of this. Cool, we'll throw this down onto a timeline. Excellent, cool. We're going to make another video layer up here, Command-Y, new video track. And we're going to patch this up here and make a new video track. And we're going to put Bruce up here. So we're going to go Bruce, just talking.
We bought the land. We bought the land for Northlands in 1991. 2 years to build the building, and then 4.5 years to do all the inside work.
All right, cool. So I have that. I'm going to throw that here on the timeline. We're going to keep the audio for that. That is actually 9 seconds long, so it's going to be a little bit there. So it's going to be up top here. Excellent. Looks like there. So now we have Bruce up top here.
To north.
And we want to cut Bruce out. We want to cut Bruce out, and we don't want to have to go to After Effects to do this. We want to do this inside of here. So the cutout effect, the ability to cut something out, is through this effect called Animatte. And Animatte provides a couple different crazy controls that will allow you to see here. So we're going to open the effect editor and we're going to look at the Animatte here. So this control is about acceleration and tracking and all those things. But first, we'll close up feathering, we'll close up magic mask, and we'll close up there. We want to choose a shape. So for now, we're going to choose a circular shape. We're going to choose an oval and use the oval tool and grab in a oval and say, let's grab in this of Bruce here. So we're going to Bruce, and now we've cut out Bruce into the circular shape. We can put the circular shape right over him, etc. It's there. And so now we've cut this out and we've cut out a circular shape. Really easy. Now it's Bruce in a circle. He looks great. Fantastic. If we want to, we can add some feathering to this circle. We can click on this circle. So make sure you click on it first. We'll add some horizontal and vertical feathering, a little softness, 11 pixel feathering there. And so now we have this having a little bit of feathering there. Again, we can play this through and see, oh, look.
Northlands in 1991.
If you want to do that, congratulations, you have Animatte that you can do that. Fantastic. We're going to go back to effects here. We'll grab this circle shape. We'll delete this. Cool. Now we have Bruce there. We can have a rectangular shape. We could grab a rectangle shape and make a rectangle shape. There we go. Same thing. Rectangle shape. It still has the 11 pixel feathering in here. Cool. We can make this just a little smaller. Again, we have a rectangular shape. Amazing there, like so. But we want to go a little bit more fancy, a little bit more advanced. We're going to here apply the Animatte effect back on here. In the Animatte effect, we want to make our own shape here. So we can go to the polygon shape. And the polygon shape allows us to click and make points. This is what we wanted. We want to draw points around Bruce. And grab points around Bruce here. We'll grab points. Some of you are wondering, you visual effects people are wondering, if I click and drag, can I make curves? Yeah, you can. Click and drag and make curves. Yeah. Just like making masks. Yep. This is your tool to make masks. It doesn't exist in any other tool, but we can grab tools to make masks. This creates Bezier curves, which we have that look like this. These little Bezier handles that create curves. We made these curves around Bruce. And if you go to the first one, you cut out Bruce like there. And so this is Bruce cut out like so. Now, if we look here, we have these controls here. Right now we have the mask itself. So we can move the mask, move it around, adjust it to a different part of Bruce, or we keep it here around Bruce and keep it cut like so around Bruce. We can obviously enlarge it, make it a little bit bigger on the bottom, bigger on the top. Grab these points, and we can grab here and adjust it like so. There's a control here. So this right now is the selection tool. There's a control here that allows us to rotate it. You'll see this little dot in the center that we can put this dot somewhere, and we can say, hey, let's rotate it from here if we want to rotate it. So we have that ability to rotate the mask in that fashion if we wanted to rotate it. Obviously, I'm going to undo because I don't want to do that. We'll leave that alone. Cool. So the mask is there, cut out there. And then the more important thing is we do have the ability to grab these points. So this is the reshape tool, and this shows us all the points we made. And if we click on one of these points, we can see our curved edges, and we can make this mask exactly how it is and exactly what we want it to be, and move these points around. And so if we need to reshape this to fit how we want to, we can have it there and have that as a perfectly workable animated mask. So this is how we do kind of our rotoscoped masks. There. Again, I can click on this in effect mode and click on the shape, make sure we can bring up the feathering, and we can have some little bit of feathering on the edges there and have that in here.
For Northlands in
Perfectly fine. We can grab this and we can animate this. So if his head was moving drastically, or there's something going on where he moved drastically, we could decide to reshape this. So we could have it be one shape here, and then go someplace else and theoretically change the shape and redraw this at this new position point. And this is the new shape of the mask at these new position points, whatever it may be. We'll just make this drastic, and these points will move at these points. So you see that they're moving there. Now obviously I don't want to reshape it this way, and he doesn't move that much that he moves his head a little bit, but we can reshape there. But we can draw masks to cut this out in there. This is the Animatte control. This is the control you've been looking for. This does the animated masks that you can do some real interesting compositing. I'll show you a couple more features of this, and we'll move on to something really quickly to talk about as an idea. So in here, if I go, sorry, let me undo, actually, I'll bring this back. If I go back to the effect editor, let's say I grab this mask, we're going to delete this mask. There also is a free draw. So there is an ability to free draw and draw your own shape, whatever it may be. So you can just draw your own shape and make your own whatever it may be. However artistic you are, you can make that whatever shape you want it to be. I don't love the free draw. It's kind of weird to me. That's because I can't draw, and I can't draw to save myself, so I don't really have that ability. But if you can draw, or you can write, if you wanted to write the letter B or something, you want to make like a B for Bruce. You could make a B for Bruce and cut out a B for Bruce. Something like that. You could do something like that, I guess. But I can't even write a decent letter B. Bruce. Be kind of hand drawn, kind of cut out like there. Sure, thing you could do. It's just an option. It does make points. It does kind of decide what the points are based on how you drew the points, but it is a freehand draw there. I guess if you have a touchpad or something, or not touchpad, but a kind of a Wacom tablet or something like that, you could do something a little bit better, but it is there as an option. So there. And then lastly, as a separate idea, you do also have the ability to use the brush tool. And the brush tool brings up the brush. So let's take a look at the brush. And the brush tool allows us to go in here and bring up a brush. So right now our brush is this big. Let's make our brush a little bit bigger. We'll go to size here. We'll make our brush nice and big. And we can draw a brush of what we want to keep or what we want to get rid of. We can tell it, say, hey, let's, instead of doing this, let's just draw, this way, and this way, and this way, and now it's going to keep that section of Bruce. So we drew a shape here. Again, go back to selection, you can see the shape that we drew looks like this. And so the shape looks like basically this shape that we drew here. So I'll do this again just as an idea. We could say, hey, we want to go and take our brush, and you can choose different types of points and different types of tips for your brush. I think a circle works perfectly fine, but you can choose different arrows or whatever, ovals or whatever you want to choose, but we'll just say the circle, and we're going to say, hey, I just want to keep, this part of Bruce, and just draw around and choose. Oops, I actually right-clicked here for a second. Let me undo that for a second. Let's try this again. Let's grab here and grab our brush like so, drag there, and drag around, and say, I keep right-clicking. I keep coming too close to my tablet. Last time, hold on. We're going to do this nicely. Drag there, drag around to there, come up to there, come around, and then kind of cut out Bruce. I guess, theoretically, you could cut out Bruce that way and kind of just draw the shape you want to draw. Fill them in, and then that would be Bruce cut out. I mean, that's another way to do that. That's another idea of ways we could do that. Maybe reduce the feathering on the edges a little bit, a little sharper there. And so we have that there, cut out like there. It's a thing you could do. Maybe it's a cool idea. I don't know. Maybe it's a cool thing you can do like there. In addition, one of the things you can do is in terms of keyframing. We don't have too many frames here, so we're going to turn off the keyframing here. We're going to delete some of the keyframing, delete some of the frames that exist there. The Animatte automatically makes two keyframes, one at the beginning, one at the end. But we can go to the beginning here and say at the beginning point here, there's actually, if we go here and show the path here, there's actually a way to reduce the path. Which is what we drew. We drew this way and this way and this way and this way. And so we can reduce the path down to nothing. And this would erase the part we drew. So this would be a cool effect. This would be kind of a cool effect to do kind of a drawn effect of Bruce just showing up. That's kind of a weird idea. Let's take how that looks. And Bruce
we bought the land for Northlands in 1991. 2 years to build the building, and then 4.5 years to do all the inside.
All right, I wouldn't use it here for this interview clip, but it might be a playful thing that you want to do for some kind of transition effect or some kind of a wipe on effect. It is a thing you could do. It's an idea. Try it. Don't try it. The world is yours. I just want to show you that it can be done and the tricks exist. Anyway, that is the Animatte effect. Really quickly, built into the Animatte effect, I want to show you really quickly, because I do want to cover everything. There is a thing here called Magic Mask. I have mixed feelings about Magic Mask. I understand it exists. I understand it's there. We'll just show it to you really quickly. I'll just make a rectangle here. And we'll make a rectangle here. And if you wanted to, you could do a Magic Mask, and you could choose your Magic Mask color. This is basically a chroma key built into the Animatte. So it's an Animatte plus a chroma key. We can look at this in a different example. Let's try this. Let's get rid of this effect, or let's make a new sequence. Command-Shift-N, and we'll try this here. So we're going to say inside of here, we're going to go back to the keying effects, and I'm going to grab this clip of Sydney here. We're going to take Sydney. Oh, this is going to be great. Sydney over New York. We'll throw New York in here, and we're going to say Command-Y. We'll make a new video track, and we're going to throw in Sydney. And so Sydney over New York. Here's Sydney flying. And so we have Sydney flying like so, and Sydney's flying like there. And so we just have Sydney flying. There she goes. We're going to take her for a couple seconds. Flying, 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 flying. Cool. Excellent. We'll just take that. We'll throw that into video 2 and throw that up there. And so now we have Sydney flying over New York. So we're going to take Sydney, take a look at her up here. Amazing. We may want to go in here and we may want to say, hey, let's take this, and before we do anything, we have a bunch of garbage in this scene, a bunch of scenes that aren't green. She was shot in front of a green screen, but it wasn't necessarily shot in front of green. So what we want to do is we want to take the Animatte, and we want to cut out the parts of Sydney that we want to keep. So let's go to the Animatte effect. Let's go to the polygon tool, and let's just say, hey, we're going to grab here, and here, and here, and just, keep the parts of Sydney that are actually Sydney. Get rid of anything else that doesn't count as Sydney. So now we have this cut out like there. Well, in here, the magic mask, we can choose a shade of green. Here, like so. We can choose a shade of green. Now, again, this is not doing the green that I wanted to do, so let's play a little bit. What I may do, and I'll show you a trick, this is what I do sometimes, is right now it's not showing the right shade of green because it's grabbing me the wrong color here. And if I use the color info thing, you know how I love the color info thing, it's not my best friend. But if I double click, I bring up this guy. And this guy may help me a little bit more. So let's go here and let's back up a second. Let's go here to the gain amount, and we'll bring the gain amount down to full. Okay, so this is full green here. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say, let's grab this color here. And rather than grab something like this, which we could do, grab here, boom, that might work for us. We'll turn the gain back down and say, pull this back, and now we're cutting this out here, and we're keeping this green. We can invert this, and yeah, that's not really doing what we wanted to do. Again, I may not use the magic mask. I have some mixed feelings with the magic mask. I was going to try the magic mask. Oh, I was going to show you really quickly. What I may do here is I may say, hey, let's do this. Let's go here. Let's look at what shade of green this is and what the values are, and then type in those values for hue, saturation, and value. And so we can look in those terms in terms of the hue, saturation, and luminance, or whatever it may be, and we can type in those numbers specifically. The magic mask is kind of a weird animal. I don't necessarily love it. I don't necessarily love what it's doing. I don't really like how it works. This would cut it out. What I may do instead is I may say, hey, let's get rid of the magic mask. Let's turn the magic mask off. Let's not do the magic mask at all. We'll have this enabled or not enabled. We'll turn the magic mask off here. I may go here and I say, hey, this is great. This is everything I want it to be. Let's go to key effects. Let's throw spectrum out on top of this. Option drag this on top of there so it layers this on top of there. So now we have this, but we also have the spectrum matte effect on top of this. So now we have the spectrum matte and the Animatte. We'll go to the spectrum matte effect. Hopefully it grabs right green, which it doesn't seem like it's going to do. So let's go back to here, click on this. Nope. Didn't grab the right color. Green, there we go. And cut that out there. And now we have something we can work with. Again, we can show the alpha, we can go to the chroma controls and see what we're doing here in terms of key sat line. Nope. We want a little bit of key sat, but there's a little bit of transparency in here, so I think I want that transparency to shine through. We'll take this. We want to get rid of that other green. So there's two shades of green here, which is going to be a little bit tricky. Oh, that's doing something. It's the inner softness. We can even go alpha offset. Yeah, and get some better kind of key there. So we're starting to get some better looking key. And we can try to see what we get by getting rid of all this. Again, this is also showing the background, which is not what we wanted to do, but that's going to be fine. Show alpha. There we go. And we have, we have some control there. We have Sydney flying to some degree. We obviously want to go in here and play with the spill a little bit. We want to play with the matte processing and maybe blur this a little bit so it's a little bit softer. That's looking a little bit better there. Maybe not so much, but there. And we have, Sydney flying over New York. There she is, flying over New York. Again, it would take some work. We're going to take some more work and do some more work. Man, this thing makes me crazy sometimes. Whew. But two controls we can do. I don't really love the magic mask that's inside of the Animatte effect. It's not my favorite. So this effect will probably work a little bit better for you and do some better things for you. All right, before we're done, and I know we've been doing a lot of stuff, we're going to do one more thing, Command-Shift-N. Put this in the key bin, we'll go here. I do want to talk about this last effect called the Matte Key effect. And the Matte Key effect works this way. We can take a layer like New York City Aerial. So we're going to go here to bins, we're going to take New York City Aerial, and we're going to take New York City Aerial, and we're going to drag this, we'll just say, overwrite this down here. We're going to do another layer, Command-Y, and we're going to make another layer. And we'll put this other layer on top of here. This is what's called the 3-layer Matte Key. We'll take a layer, let's see, maybe we'll take something from the Animatte effect. Say we'll take this shot here of some of this train stuff here. So we're going to do this train stuff here, and I want to take this train stuff. We'll actually just take this. Sorry, we'll move these effects here. Yeah, we'll take this from here to here. Put this in video track 2. Fantastic. Great. And we'll throw this over top of this. Cool. And so we have these 2 layers like so. We have this layer on top of this layer. Now we're going to make a third layer. We're going to build a third layer here. In the third layer, what we're going to do is we're going to go to Effect Palette. And inside Effect Palette, we're going to add the Matte Key effect. Or sorry, we're going to add another layer. Sorry. Another layer. Let's go to the Key Effects and let's go to the AFC. So the AFC is the Artist for Change. We're going to have that like here. And so up top of this, we're going to say, let's mark this. And we are going to throw that on top of there. And so now we have this video on top of this. This is video on top of this. And then in the third layer is going to be the AFC logo. And the AFC logo is on top. But on the third layer, on the AFC logo, we are going to go to Effect Palette. And we're going to throw the Matte Key on here. And the Matte Key makes it look like this. And so it's cut New York City Aerial into Artist for Change based on another layer, based on the brightness values of another layer. So it's using the third layer, the top layer, as this cookie cutter that cuts one thing down into something else and layers them down this way. This is this idea of a 3-layer Matte Key. So this is the cutout, the AFC logo is the cutout. It's cutting this into here. It's keeping New York as the white parts. It's keeping the train as the black parts, and it's cutting out there. But I believe if you go into the key effect, you can actually swap the sources or invert the key and have it be the opposite. So this would be the ability to cut something into something else using a 3-layer Matte Key, and you have those controls there. There's a scaling control, a position control, there's a crop control, so you can do some adjustments. If you wanted to, you can cut something into something else using a 3-layer Matte Key. And so this is how you build a 3-layer Matte Key. A lot of times, people will give you animation that may be, hey, here's an animation that doesn't have an alpha channel, but we recorded the alpha channel, we exported the alpha channel separately, and we want you to bring that in. This is an old switcher trick. So if you ever worked in a TV studio, on a switcher you had, your program bus and then your preview bus, and then you had your third layer, which was your ME2 or your aux layer. And you could put a key on there and key something into something else based on a third piece of information, and that third piece of information lays on top of there and brings it in. And so that is the Matte Key. If you ever want to do stuff like that, you do have the Matte Key that control exists for you to do those things. Really quickly, if you bring something in, if you import something that has an alpha channel, we talked about this before, when you bring something in, input source browser, and I go here and I bring in this picture of this giraffe that has an alpha channel, you'll notice that when it brings this in, when we go to import, it says import invert alpha. That's fine. When we bring this in here and we import this in, one of the things that will happen is, yes, brings this in, it creates a Matte Key. It builds a Matte Key into the giraffe already. It actually takes, the way that it does an alpha channel is, it takes that black and white alpha channel and it builds it as a kind of embedded Matte Key automatically. So it shows up like this. And so here, the giraffe shows up like this. Now if you took a new layer, Command-Y, new layer, put the giraffe on top of here, which would be a really weird sequence. But we're going to do it anyway. So we'll mark this and we'll say, let's throw the giraffe on top of here. So here's the giraffe on top of here. There. If you ever look at the giraffe, if you double click and open this up, you'll see, oh, here's the Matte Key layer. Here's the video, the picture of the giraffe, and then here's everything else beneath it. So it actually embeds 2 layers. One called the alpha cut and the graphic fill. And so those two layers live inside of there. So if you ever see that for some reason when I bring in something that has an alpha channel built into it, it comes up like this, that's why. It comes up with this alpha channel built into there. Those are all the key effects that naturally exist inside of Avid without bringing in any kind of third-party effects or bringing in any kind of imported effects that do keying. There are other effects out there that do some kind of keying. There's chroma keying effects that I really like. But here's the truth. A lot of times, Avid says, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to create some keying effects. We can do some green screening. We can do some animating. We can do some masks or whatever it may be. We can do some cropping, or we can do some basic compositing. We can do some compositing, but honestly, a lot of people are doing compositing in visual effects software. And Avid is not comparing themselves to a visual effects software. They're not Nuke, they're not After Effects, they're not even Boris. They have Boris, they work with Boris a lot. A lot of the stuff work with Boris Continuum or Boris Red. And so they say, hey, if you're gonna do a lot of complex visual effects, if you're a visual effects artist, doing those other programs, but at least you can pre-visualize what you're doing inside of Avid with using these separate controls, these separate effects to do any kind of keying you want to do. All right, so play with those, enjoy those. They are what they are. Have fun with them, and we'll see you in a future lesson.